Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
And we welcome you to this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. I'm Eric Lopez. Jeff Sharon has entered the transfer portal, everybody. He does not, please respect his privacy. Thankfully, Kyle Nash, Andrew Glukoff, Bryson Turner, all here. They didn't enter the portal, although a couple of them might be applying to play at the Military Bowl. We need some players. Coming up on the show, we're going to have our final thoughts on the UCF loss to Tulane and what went wrong and what's next. We'll talk about some of the players that have departed via the transfer portal or declaring for the NFL draft and the impact of those losses. And that UCF bowl game matchup, a rematch, payback for Coach K and Zion. Not quite. We'll break that down, the excitement of the Military Bowl against Duke. Also later, the one team that won this weekend for UCF, men's basketball. Well, in overtime. Kyle had to literally work overtime. He'll break that down for us. And we'll briefly mention women's basketball, 40-point loss, Auburn. And we'll talk volleyball is in their season. That's all coming up on this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret. Just check it out at blackandgoldbanneret.com and check us out on all our favorite social media places, including our YouTube place. Subscribe there where you get to check out Night Shift, where Bryson, me, Kyle, and Drew, we all broke down the Tulane loss in depth over 2 hours, as a matter of fact. But we'll begin the show with kind of, now that we've had a few days, guys, to think about it. I want to ask all you, Kyle, and Drew, and I'll start with you, Drew. Years from now, when you look back at this Tulane loss in the American Conference Championship game, what's going to come to your mind?
Well, after the game, I tried entering the portal, and the portal threw me out. Wow. So that's why I'm still here. The truth is, much like what happened at the end of Conference USA's tenure, UCF wins the division. They go to the conference championship game. They lose. They actually lost the last game in the MAC as well. I mean, it's just kind of like the old wrestling saying of leaving on your back, where a lot of times you're leaving a promotion, they make you lose your last match and you move on. Well, this just happens to be the way it kind of fell out. And the truth is, in the grand scheme of things, it's not very material because UCF each time has moved on to a new conference and has done well. They obviously the MAC was some dark times, but they moved to Conference USA. They did well. They moved on to the American. They did well. And now they move on to the Big 12. So, yeah, does it hurt? Sure. Did we want to see the Knights go to the Cotton Bowl? Sure. But in the grand scheme of things, is this a really bad situation? No. It's still the Military Bowl. It's against an ACC opponent and a chance to at least start stretching the legs into the life of the Power Five.
Kyle, what will you remember when you think back to this game?
I mean, for me, it's going to be about injury and limitation up front and basically the way the season ended being disappointing. And I think that part is what fans are going to remember. But I think the part that's not being talked about is everybody wants to point out about something Gus's offense. This is a growing pain, I feel like, as UCF as an offense transitions into what Gus is trying to do, be it with mobile quarterbacks or smash mouth style football, running the ball or any of that. And moreover, I think the defenses collapse. is going to be a big part of what is remembered for this year, and how they started so strong and then themselves kind of tapering off in the last two games. Say what you will about Navy holding a team to 17 points. It's still something that's a good performance overall, in my opinion. That being said, I think it's just going to be, ending disappointed, but I think at the same time, fans have plenty of positives to pull out, right? Making sure that cotton nail in football against USF remains an 8-6 series win instead of a 7-7 tie historically, that sort of thing. There were plenty of positive moments, but there isn't a big wow moment, certainly not compared to last year where Gus made his debut. This group was still the first in the state to be bowl eligible. This group was still somebody that, won some big games, beating a Tulane, which eventually came back to claim the championship, and also beating Cincinnati, which I think is a big deal in and of itself.
Bryson, what will you remember years from now when you think of this game?
I think years from now, I think I'm going to remember this as a bit of a climax to what was a kind of a late season collapse, to be honest, from this team. I mean, the Navy loss, almost blowing it against USF, and then losing to Tulane in the conference championships sort of takes the cake. Now, the fact that we made it into the conference championship to begin with, I think is good, but I think that if there's a theme of this season is that it's going to be missed opportunities, and that we left stuff on, and we left money on the table. And I think overall it's going to be like a season where, I think we'll look back on and think, we probably could have done better. I'm not completely, I don't think it was a bad season, but it really could have been better. And I feel bad that we didn't reach that potential. Unrealized potential. That's the word.
There you go. Potential. I will think of it as what ifs, because this year is what if. If they beat East Carolina, they host College Game Day. And it's funny, Bryson, you mentioned left money on the table. You could argue this team left a lot of money on the table. Cost them game day exposure. If they beat Navy, they're hosting the conference championship game. Or if they beat East Carolina, take your pick. They win one of those two games, they're hosting the conference championship game. Left money on the table there. If you beat Tulane, you're going to the Cotton Bowl. Playing USC for the first time ever. Didn't win that. Lose money on the table. And all of it was surrounded by this swirl drama of the quarterback room and who should play quarterback and who's not playing quarterback. And Drew, it's funny. I love the wrestling analogy, which you got me. It was with the wrestler on his last match before leaving the territory, taking the loss. That is a tradition unlike any other, unless you're Bret Hart.
I was playing to the audience there.
Well, I'll give you another wrestling term. Mikey Keene was the tag team wrestler that was, helping out all year. He's reaching out to his partner. His partner is in need. He needs help. That partner in need is reaching out for the tag, and Mikey Keene gets off the ring apron and walks out to the backstage like a heel would do in wrestling tag team match, and made himself not available for that game. Pretty wild stuff. Those are some of the things I will remember from that Tulane game. And the fact that we saw a young freshman thrown to the wolves. Thomas Castellanos burned his red shirt, clearly not ready. You, Drew, and Kyle, both of you were ready. Were right on that. That was a situation you tried to avoid, couldn't avoid. And then JRP playing really hard, considering he was less than 100% clearly, battles his guts out. And to Kyle's point, that defense getting torched. So those are the thoughts from the Tulane game. Let me ask you both, Drew and Kyle, because you both had a great segment while I was doing volleyball postgame on night shift. But I watched back, which I encourage you all to do as well. And you both dissected the defense. Scheme versus the personnel. You felt that the scheme did not help the personnel, especially on the secondary. A lot of talk about it, obviously, during the game and after the game, about so many wide open guys playing far back, even alumni players being critical. Just kind of expand on this. Now you have a few days, because since then we've now learned there's a few defensive players now leaving. Discuss that, because you two kind of had some interesting thoughts there about the scheme and then the player personnel, what went wrong and how Tulane was able to expose it.
Well, Drew, you're the defensive guy. I mean, the only thing I really felt like was different is you're sitting back and bend, don't break to prevent for the big plays, and yet still there were 4 touchdowns. Was it a 40 yards or more? I mean, I don't think
6.
What was that, buddy?
4 out of the 6 of them were over 40 yards.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what I mean. Right, exactly. So with all that in mind, I kind of feel like the scheme failed the players if the idea was to bend and not break, right? I don't know what more I can add beyond that.
Well, I mean, the scheme, the way the scheme's designed is to help players that aren't as good. The thing is, UCF had the talent and speed to be able to hang with these receivers. You could work with bump coverage and play tighter and stick with man without getting burned. You don't need that huge buffer. There was a certain point where Justin Hodges was lining up over 10 yards off the receiver. And then not only that, to compound it, his angle of attack was so off that he missed the play when it came towards him. That was the other thing. If you're going to be playing off the ball, you have to have your angle of attack right. You have to anticipate where the receiver is going and work on an intercept course. If you try to aim for where he is, he's not going to be there. And that happened multiple times as a result of with a bad angle. Then you have an arm tackle, or you maybe getting a hand, not enough to actually pull a player down, right. And you start getting these huge chunk plays as a result. But they've been doing this all year, outside of a couple of small pockets where they started playing tighter coverage. And when they played that tight coverage, that thing with a little bit of bump at the line, it made a difference. They did at the end of Cincinnati. And they shut the Cincinnati offense down. They went nowhere. So it's like, great. That's awesome. They're finally starting to get it. And then they went back to what was not working before. And it never worked.
Yeah, I wonder, a part of me wonders too, the fact that they were that devoted to it. We saw there were moments where guys might have been isolated in the SMU game. I've cited before that was kind of a bit of a moment in the season where the defense got the most confident, and then that ECU game comes along and all that changes. And I don't want to say that I felt like there was panic from that moment on, but that was kind of the beginning of the struggles for this particular group on defense, right? That ECU game easily. But I'll put it this way: for my money, another thing that's worth pointing out is after the Navy game, the defense just wasn't quite the same in its own right in other ways as well. And this wouldn't be the first group that started to get fatigued after playing Navy in a season, especially late. And, as much as we don't want to draw comparisons necessarily to 2017 because of the hurricanes and things like that came through, 18, I feel like had kind of the same effect on this group too. I mean, I'll put it this way. The one thing that a lot of fans will remember from this year is not having to play Navy anymore. That's probably worth mentioning. But overall, yeah, I'm kind of with you. It's just, I feel like the scheme is what it's been, Drew. And over and above that, Willie Fritz knew they were going to come out with that because he's a good football coach. And
he's seen it already.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the big thing, Kyle, is when you're playing a team for the second time, you got to change it up because they have film on you against them. But, whatever reason, they went out with the same game plan, and it fizzled.
It fizzled. Now, they don't have to play Navy, Kyle, but UCF does have to play where Navy does normally play in the Military Bowl. As a result, UCF will take on Duke. December 28th, 2:00 kick. Drew, credit to you. You were, from the beginning, you felt Military Bowl for UCF if they didn't get to Cotton Bowl. You felt, and I think we both were on the same page on this. We felt this year UCF was going to go out of state no matter what. So we nailed that correctly. So let me ask you this, thoughts, because I'm tired of talking about the Tulane game. Everybody's tired of it. We just want to burn it to the ground. Although I will bring up some TV numbers about that game momentarily. But give me your thoughts, Drew, on the Military Bowl matchup here against Duke.
This is a very interesting team. Mike Elko. Actually, I had the opportunity to vote for the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year, and Mike Elko received one of my 3 votes.
Wow, look at this, Kyle. Look at this guy showing off, saying he's a voter. Look at this guy.
Well, they at least take our suggestions into consideration. But you get a first, second, and third vote. He was my third place guy. I'd like to point out that Willie Fritz was my first place.
Are you
guy.
allowed to even unveil? Wow, you're unveiling your votes here. Okay.
There's nothing that said I can't.
And that's okay. I'll gladly take your spot, and I'll keep my mouth shut next year.
Yeah, this isn't the Baseball Hall of Fame where you get in trouble for selling your vote. Definitely not the issue. But this is a very scrappy team, an efficient team. They went 8-4 in the ACC. They defeated Wake Forest to close out the season, which, as we know, Wake Forest started off ranked before they kind of got very streaky. But this is a very good team. You have a quarterback in Riley Leonard, who is the thing that UCF dreads the most. Now, Eric, without giving any hints, what does UCF always dread the most in a quarterback?
Dual threat.
Boom. Dual threat quarterback. Just under 2,800 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, over 600 yards, and 11 touchdowns on the ground. This is a dual threat quarterback, and UCF has, historically struggled against dual threat quarterbacks. So obviously from that standpoint, it's not a great matchup for the Knights, but on the flip side, it is a great matchup in the fact of this is an opportunity to play a P5 school, get a little bit of hardware, go for a 10th win, and you're punching up, you're not punching down. And that was one of the big things that I pushed against in the Florida in-state bowl games, all the bowl games that UCF was eligible to get to, the Cure, the Boca Raton, and the Gasparilla. All was going to be a case of punching down. Because originally, if UCF ended up in the Gasparilla, they weren't going to play a power conference team. They were probably end up with someone else. So they shipped them out, and they've got a pair of power conferences into the Gasparilla using some of their loopholes within their conference tie-ins. But this is actually the best that you've got to be able to travel. This is the furthest north that UCF has played a bowl game. It's something different. I can't speak for others, but I was tired of the in-state stuff. They're pre-Christmas bowl games. That's you want that extra practice time, especially you're breaking in some new guys. You have players that have left. You need to get them more reps. What's the best way to get more reps? Give them more practice. Have a later bowl game, which affords you that luxury. So you got December 28th. So you got the holidays, get them out of the way, and then you got a little bit more in the game itself. I think this is a best case scenario for UCF since the Cotton Bowl became out of their reach.
Kyle, your thoughts on that? Do you agree with Drew on that, or you fired up for Duke UCF?
So granted, you weren't going to be able to match the luster that was them battling Florida last year, the way that all worked out. And listen, to Drew's point, when he was analyzing this and making predictions for the bowl games that went up, that you and Drew made on blackandgoldbanneret.com, he didn't know to that point that it would be placed by two Power 5 teams this year, of course, being Wake Forest and Missouri. But let's be honest, guys, in this particular instance, would the fan base have been excited to play Missouri? The only pushback I would offer is maybe Wake Forest is on par-ish with playing Duke. But at the end of the point, Drew is right from this standpoint that whether fair or not, pre-Christmas bowl games are given a bit of a nose turn in that they're just not as important or relevant, or you pick the word. But they certainly don't have the prestige as their post-Christmas brethren. And that he's 100% accurate. And I that prestige is what UCF needs as it's heading to the Big 12. So if anybody were to battle back Drew's point of punching up, battling Wake Forest, fair or not, would be perceived by the lame stream as being punching up.
I'm enjoying the fact that Kyle's breaking down, has to break down ACC teams, his favorite conference that he loves to talk about. That's what I'm
loves
enjoying.
The ACC.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Here's my thought. If Miami would have been bowl eligible, we might have gotten Miami UCF in the Military Bowl, perhaps, right? Like that. The problem that we're missing is we don't have a Florida matchup this year that UCF could fall under, or if Miami was bowl eligible. So you're kind of, by randomness, you end up getting Duke, who has had a good year. Mike Elko, you mentioned it, has done a nice job there, left Texas A&M. We've seen what's happened to Texas A&M since he left. I think 8-4 They should be excited. They haven't been in a bowl in a few years. They should be the ones that are excited there. But I don't know if the fan base for UCF will be excited, even though they're going to be staying in Washington, D.C. And if somebody's been up there, that's not a bad place to hang out post-Christmas.
Oh, not at all. The only way I'd correct you, Eric, and then I'm sure Drew will come in and tell me why this is wrong. But if Miami, if Miami were bowl eligible, I really think you would have seen a Gasparilla Bowl appearance for the two teams.
Ooh. Drew, you want to respond to that?
I mean, is it possible? Sure, and fans would love it, but the truth is it doesn't actually help from a national standpoint.
Yeah, not from a prestige standpoint, Drew, but I'm thinking of the dollars. Listen, it was recently, I shouldn't say recently released, but I saw something out there on Twitter that as endowment goes for teams, UCF is pretty low in the Big 12, if not outright the lowest. And that's even including among some of its brethren that are soon to transition into the Big 12 in question. So let's not forget the fiscal aspect. From
Let me tell you,
national standpoint, you are correct, though. I'm not arguing that.
I actually looked into that this morning, and let me tell you, not only is UCF the lowest endowment in the Big 12, UCF's endowment is lower than Florida Atlantic's, Florida International's, and less than 25% of South Florida's.
Oh.
UCF's endowment is low. I mean, for the school its size, it is really low. So, I mean, it's actually something they really should be focusing on. But that's my opinion. It's actually it was something. It caught my attention this when it was brought up because I know what you were talking about, and I looked into it. I'm like, wow, they're really low. Yeah, they're not as bad as North Florida or West Florida, but the fact that Florida International has a.
But how does that how do we fix that? How does it get fixed?
Well, I mean, you do it through fundraising efforts, but the focus is, everyone's so focused on athletics, the dollars are all going there through fundraising, efforts and whatnot. The endowment fund kind of gets forgotten. And then someone tried to spin with me that, it's because they're aggressively spending. Well, that means they're not spending well because means they're over leveraging now because the endowment is supposed to help with funding things tomorrow with dividends and interest payments and everything. So I think from an academic standpoint there may be some changes in philosophy needed, but yeah, the endowment is way off the pace for the rest of the Big 12. But UCF is also 40 years younger than the next school,
right,
which I think is Houston.
Too. Yeah,
that's right.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a big factor there too. So
I think Bryson has something.
Go ahead, Bryce. What you got?
Well, I'm just saying that, if I would say there'll be a certain subsect of UCF fans that as long as they're fans of both the football team and the men's basketball team, that they will be excited to have another shot against Duke in another sport. Of course, thinking back to that NCAA tournament matchup, Taco Fall versus Zion Williamson, I'm sure those people will be excited to have another shot.
We're going to see that. We're going to see that footage during that bowl game all the time, aren't we?
It's going to suck.
It's going to suck another factor, because Drew mentioned the dual threat quarterback to watch out for, but I think there's another thing that we're going to be overlooking here. Remember how John Marshall during the Navy game really just had his way with the UCF offense? Well, I think that we need to watch out for the Duke defensive line, because amongst that defensive line is one Dwayne Carter, who is 11th in the nation in forced fumbles and fumbles recovered, and he also has 6 quarterback hurries on his season, but he's not even the highest on his team in that. RJ Oben, who's a defensive end, has 9 QB hurries on the season. I think that the Duke defensive line is going to be something to watch out for, and if John Rice Plumlee isn't 100% or isn't better for that game, then I think that they're looking how they handle them is going to be something to watch.
Yeah, no, I like that you brought that up, Bryson, because the other piece that's important to analyze for this game is the same thing we analyzed for Isaiah Bowser last year going into the Gasparilla. This could be the healthiest that John Rice Plumlee's been in weeks, right? In this particular situation, granted, it's he would have even more time than Isaiah Bowser did, because this bowl is happening 5 days later. So with all that in mind, Bryson, that attack while still worthy of mention, taking nothing from you, I haven't had the opportunity to kind of see the disbursement of those turnovers and what games they happened, how many he has per game, all that other sort of stuff yet. I haven't really gotten into the numbers as yet. I've been analyzing other stuff. What can I say? But the punchline being, that's the counter argument to the defensive front being what it is. That being said, also, the secondary is good for 9 interceptions as a squad. That's worthy of mention, I think, too. But again, I think the biggest takeaway is John Rice Plumlee's health is going to be in a place it hasn't been perhaps since what, guys? Certainly before Navy, right?
Well, that brings up an interesting question. How much do you play him in this bowl game versus keeping him rested? I mean, we've had, so you don't want to get a serious bowling game injury that could affect you next year. John Rice Plumlee announced on Monday that he's coming back in 2023. You already burned Thomas Castellanos at redshirt. Gus Malzahn said in the post game of the Tulane game that we would see more of Thomas here. Obviously, you got the extra practice time, but could you see, both of you, real quick, do you see both Plumlee and Castellanos playing in the bowl game, maybe splitting the reps?
I don't know so much splitting the reps, but you're going to see Thomas Castellanos play. The red shirt's been burned, and Gus made it pretty clear they're not going to waste it. Obviously the year of eligibility has been wasted, but they're at least going to use him to a certain extent after this. But you can't. I don't think you can openly rely on him. The game, as we saw, the game's too fast right now, and for a true freshman quarterback, that's okay. That's normal. That's expected. You don't get too many freshman quarterbacks that the game slows down enough that they can be, very, functional and winning. That's why they're not out there usually. So he needs time. He needs a good off-season program to study this stuff. But get him a few more reps at this point. Work him in there a little bit. I wouldn't put the game on the line with him. But at this point, bowl games are exhibition games. That's we forget that they're exhibition games. So you know what? Put him on up there. Get him a little more game rep time. Yeah, he may get tossed around and he may struggle, but you know what? At this point, you burn the red shirt. You might as well take advantage of it.
Drew, I could not disagree with you more in this particular category. Now, granted, this isn't me saying your points aren't well thought out. Drew, you have a very lucid, intelligent, well thought out process to make your point. Completely overruled. It's an exhibition game, sure, but now it's the only marketing tool or recruiting tool, I should say, that Gus has that reaches people the way a championship game reaches people. And one could argue this game could reach people more depending on how many games it's competing with that day. I haven't checked the schedule, but the punchline is this, buddy. At the end of the day, you and I both know Castellanos isn't ready. You and I both know that he proved it in that championship game, and you and I both know he's not going to suddenly be a force over this short span of time to get done whatever he needs done. He needs a full offseason for that. Will we see him? Maybe, but he's not going to. It's not a guarantee in my mind, Drew, especially if this game is going to be as close as I'm thinking early that it might be, especially with players flying off again and again. I'm sure we'll get into that later here in the podcast, but this is when I feel like Gus, based on how he's talked and done things in the past, he's going to push all his chips into the table. You're going to see John Rice Plumlee play probably all of, if not, let's say 80% of the offensive snaps. If Castellanos is in, the game is either guaranteed to be over because they're getting thumped or they're thumping Duke. I don't see either of those scenarios happening, though. There's just so much in my mind with the movement on offense. To throw Castellanos in here in this game does a disservice to the program and the young man himself, frankly. I don't see what he would gain specifically. Now, will he see practice time like you talk about? Oh, absolutely. And I think that'll be valuable in his growth. But I know you're going to, you may not necessarily agree on the importance of the PR aspect of it and the sentimental, lacking a better word, aspect of it, doing something to kind of save the season, sort of like the Gasparilla Bowl did last year. Now, maybe it won't do it to the same extent. As a matter of fact, I know that it won't, but being able to finish the year beating a Power 5 team is going to be a big deal to this group. And I think that will impact how little time Castellanos gets in this bowl game, if any.
Now the prosecution wishes to rebut.
Go ahead.
From a recruiting standpoint, I don't see this as actually going to really hold much water at all.
Yeah, I do.
Early signing day is going to happen beforehand. You're already going to get some guys from the portal already in. I don't think it's going to make a difference one way or the other on that. But to clarify, I don't see him playing meaningful time, but I think you're going to see some small pockets where he may play a play or two just to be on the field. Nothing
Joey Gatewood style, right?
Yeah, almost like Joey Gatewood, but maybe not as poorly placed.
I think you got to do a little bit more. You got to turn this negative of losing his red shirt and turn it into a positive. And
well, the positive is he gets on the field at all. The truth is, you can't put him out there and lose the game. You got to at least try to you play to win the game. You got to at least be working to win the game.
And keep in mind,
you have to balance.
Let me add this too real quick, Eric, to force him in there. And to Drew's point, if he loses the game, air quotes, or is perceived to being a part of a catastrophic mistake that swings the momentum, that actually could be a net negative on the young man and his psyche. So that
yeah, exactly. Look at what happened with in basketball with Adams.
Yeah.
He lost his confidence and never found himself. So
I'm not saying
it's part of the balancing act.
Right. I'm not saying you throw him to the wolves, but I do think if you can get him some meaningful snaps and have some positives from it moving forward, I think that's a good goal to have in this game. It's not just him, by the way. Some of your young guys, because, you're going to have to play some young guys because you're going to be a little thin in certain positions. But I think that's one of the goals, more important to be honest, than the bowl game. Nobody's going to remember who wins this bowl game 5 years from now. But I think it's important to get your guys that will be back and part of this team next year to the Big 12, some some experience moving forward. Not just the quarterback. We focus on the quarterback because that's the most popular position
and
to focus.
That's the value of the practices.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because the guys who announced that they're going in the portal's open. They're gone. So, next man up. You're going to see a lot of Xavier Townsend, stepping in. You're maybe even going below that with like a Deontay Marks or something. But you're going to see guys stepping in. You have to train a brand new holder. Andrew Osteen's been holding the whole time, as we know from special teams work. Holder is a vital position.
Fair.
It can be the difference between a great kicker missing a kick and a good kicker making it. So, you have to break in a whole new guy at that point. So that's what these practices are all about, is about getting that next generation of guy some exposure and get them ready. This is almost like, you have fall practice, you have spring practice. This is like half spring practice where it's not spring ball, but you're getting a chance of seeing the future today by giving them just a little bit of extra time to work and learn. That's why these bowl, as Kyle knows from his experience, with all these bowl game interviews with head football coaches, what's the one thing they care about out of the bowl games? It's the practices. It's not all this other stuff. It's not even the game itself. It's the practices. So that's what's going to be the focus. It's getting these new guys some practice time, some exposure, and allow the game to start coming to them a little bit more. That's what's going to help Tommy Castellanos. He's the number 2 guy now. He's going to be getting the second team reps. They may even throw him a little bit on the first team just to do some work and try to build some chemistry. So I think those practices are super, super valuable.
So
we're going to have more on the bowl game, UCF Duke, leading up to December 28th here on Black and Gold Banneret. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we mentioned a lot of young guys playing in the bowl game. Why? Because there's a lot of guys that entered the portal. When we come back, we're going to play the game, folks. Who's in the portal? Plus, I will tell you why the most significant player UCF lost this week never played a snap here. Find out who that is when we come back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back here to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Eric Lopez along Kyle Nash, Drew Glukoff, Bryson Turner. Jeff Sharon is in the transfer portal, one of many UCF people in the transfer portal this week, which brings us to a game that we're going to call Who's in the Portal, everybody? The way this is going to work, our young friend Bryson Turner will name a player that entered the portal for UCF this week, and Kyle will break down the significance of that loss moving forward. All right, we'll move with that. Bryson, who's the first name you're going to bring up?
Well, since we sort of talked about him in the last segment, let's go ahead and just get him out of the way right now. Andrew Osteen.
Who wants to go first?
I mean, special teams is your house, buddy.
Well, it's true. Well, this was a case that Andrew Osteen is going to go down in the record books at UCF as being one of the best punters the school has had. However, this year he battled inconsistency and was replaced by Mitch McCarthy, who is taller than Kyle. And
not taller, he's just pretty close.
he is pretty. He makes me look short because I'm only 5'9". So what do you expect? But he's shown to have a good leg. Needs to work on his finesse a little bit more and some of those coffin corner kicks. But it's a work in progress. That's where Andrew Osteen actually excels was at those with punt accuracy. They actually started using him in situational punting late in the year, but he has 1 year of eligibility left as a grad transfer, and wants a chance to start. I mean, who wants to be the second punter on a team? No, I don't blame him at all. This is not a significant loss for UCF since they already have a replacement in place that was doing better. But it is sad to see a guy who has done a lot for the program to go.
Hey, listen, the portal giveth and it taketh away, man. And this is one that they can afford to lose. I'm with you. McCarthy's done a fantastic job. I met him too. Pretty cool guy. And I believe he's connected in some portion to rugby back in Australia. I forget exactly, but that should prove he has the hands to do the job as a holder. I think UCF in general will be just fine. And if something does go wrong on a kick, somebody will listen to this and start yelling at me.
All right, Bryson, who's next? Bryson, who's next in the portal?
All right, let's go ahead and go with a pair of defensive backs that didn't really get a lot of playing time. Let's address them really quickly. First, we have redshirt sophomore, and apologies if I mispronounce. I'm going to try Phil J. Bienemy, and then we also have another defensive back. He is a redshirt junior. He only saw the field twice today. He was originally a JUCO transfer from Sierra College, Trevion Shadrick Harris.
All right, so let's start with Phil J. Obviously, been on the team a few years, has been on the scout team. Scout team is actually a very valuable thing. Helps you prep for your opponent. And so, while people are like, oh, it's a guy who never saw the field, he saw the field in a different way. And there's value in that. So to be a good player on the scout team, you have to be able to change your style on the fly because it's based on what you're going, what the scheme of the opposing defense is going to be. So you have to have some intelligence to be able to do that. Obviously, he was able to do it for a couple of seasons. So you're losing some depth in a position that's actually losing a lot. So there may have been an opportunity for him to work up. With 3 years of eligibility left, but, obviously he wants a chance elsewhere because he wasn't cracking the two deep within UCF this year. The chance of getting a Division I, even an FCF's offer may be difficult.
That being said, if there's a guy that's qualified to bring a guy up to speed quickly, I think it is Travis Williams. Say what you will about the performance of the defense overall. A lot of guys who are young came up to speed quickly, right, Drew? When it came to the beginning of the year, even Coach Malzahn himself said that the defensive front, specifically the linebackers, were a point of concern. And lo and behold, they found a way to get a guy with at or more tackles than Tatum Bethune, who UCF fans were lamenting at this time. So at the end of the day, you're right about the scout team, but if anybody's going to be qualified as a coach or to solve for that problem, I think it'll be Travis Williams' group. They're really good at bringing guys up to speed who have the talent to do so. I'm not really so worried about those particular guys.
All right, Bryson, who is next on who entered the portal this week?
Well, just real quick, Drew, does that same thing that you said about Philje apply to Trevion as well?
I was actually going to jump in at the end and mention Trevion. I actually think he may be a more material loss. This is a guy who has a lot of experience, came from the JUCO ranks, and actually did play a little bit. Played in a couple games this year, squeezed in some garbage time. So obviously there was a chance of getting on the field there, and as a redshirt junior, you're a bit of an elder statesman as far as physical age, which can help with mentoring younger players. So there is value in those older players. But as Kyle has said, this is a team, a coaching staff that can get players at least to a serviceable level early. And by using the success of the transfer portal in the linebacking core, and they have 2 years of definitive proof of success, they can probably convert that into the defensive backfield.
All right, Eric, go ahead.
All right, who else entered the portal?
All right, he was originally a transfer to UCF from Notre Dame in May of 2021. He participated in 9 games over the course of 2 seasons with the program. It's redshirt sophomore wide receiver Jordan Johnson.
Oh, man. It's bad when you post a tweet in response to someone about this and another player, Terrence Lewis, transferred. Both were 5-star recruits. And my response was, it goes to show that rating stars to high school players is not an exact science. And then the guy you're talking about, Jordan Johnson, likes the tweet. Now, I don't know if that was to make you feel guilty because, well, my guilt and shame left ages ago. The truth is, this shows that rating high school players, their stars, is not exact science. Jordan Johnson came in with a lot of hype. He joined last year, same time as Brandon Johnson from Tennessee, but only one of them actually made any difference during their time at UCF, and it wasn't Jordan.
The guy that went on to the pros.
Yeah, Brandon Johnson, now the Denver Broncos, caught his first touchdown. Obviously, pro legacy has been cemented. Jordan Johnson, not so much. He fell down in the depth charts, has not been able to climb back up, and he's going to his 3rd school now. So I mean, you call that that's a bust.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Drew laid it down nicely. In his defense, there were a lot of other guys that came in that brought a myriad of talent and speed in their own right. It was a deep room, and that depth was eventually what drowned Jordan Johnson's chances. And hey, listen, call me biased, but when I hear Jordan Johnson, I still think of the former center.
That's what I did. That's what I was so confused when I saw that. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought he already moved on. Like, what do you mean? He's still here? No, wait, that's not the lineman? Anyway.
Oh, yeah. The only time Jordan Johnson was on UCF's field was when he was an assistant.
Cincinnati staff. Yeah. So
Cincinnati staff. Correct.
All right, Bryson. Who else entered the portal?
Well, Drew mentioned his name in the last one, so let's go ahead and for him next. You mentioned that he's another 5-star recruit at a high school. He missed most of the 2021 season with a torn ACL. We knew he was going to transfer in September, but now he is officially in the portal. It is linebacker Terrence Lewis.
Yeah, I know this one had a lot of hype, and all it did. Yeah, there was the controversy that came with some charges that were ultimately dropped in the offseason. Never really cracked anything. And then by September was already talking about leaving the program. 5-star recruit, was the number one linebacker coming out of high school, went to Maryland, tore his ACL, missed his entire freshman year, came down here and might as well had the same thing happen because he did nothing. And this is one of those cases where I think the team is actually going to be better with him not there for an attitude reason.
Oof, you're calling addition by subtraction. That's a rough go. And here's the thing, though, Drew, I don't think you're wrong necessarily. If a guy's checked out by September, he wasn't contributing much in the first place. That's clearly true. And as we said, we've already established 2 successful seasons of bringing guys in the defensive front up to speed quickly. And by the way, you got a lot of guys that are now air quotes veterans, or at least second-year guys, right? Guys who have played before in college, we'll say, that have already made their mark just so. I'm more concerned about the defensive line than I am the linebackers this year, but that's a whole other conversation I'm sure we'll get to later. I'm with you on this one, Drew, with Terrence Lewis.
All right, Bryson, who is next on Who Entered the Portal?
Well, Eric, didn't you tease earlier about someone that a transfer that didn't take a snap? That was a big...
Yeah, but he did not enter the portal. That's a tease. But we still got a couple names that have not been brought up in the portal, including a quarterback.
Yes. So now we enter the players in the portal who got a good amount of playing time or field time, I should say, because Osteen did get on the field a lot in 2022. We knew this was coming. It's quarterback Mikey Keene.
All right, so as people know, we have a little Twitter message thread between us Banneret people, and we've been saying it since day one. The moment that the starter was named, Mikey Keene was going to transfer at the end of the year, and lo and behold, Mikey Keene is transferring at the end of the year. Worst kept secret. He stepped in when he needed to as a freshman, and learned with trial by fire, stepped in when he needed to as a sophomore, played his 4 games, maintaining his red shirt. The problem with Mikey is that he's going to be dogged in his legacy by not playing in the conference championship game, and that's not fair.
At all.
At all. Not fair at all. You have to look at the whole bell of work. This team and him could have laid down and died last year. No, they actually excelled and won the Gasparilla Bowl over Florida. That didn't necessarily have to happen. And this was a guy who worked really hard at his craft. And in fact, his transfer actually may have helped lead another player to transfer. But this was really a poorly kept secret that it was going to happen. I mean, Gus said we're working on keeping his red shirt. And yeah, sure, he at the after the USF game in the heat of the moment said, yeah, sure, I'll play. And then reality set in like, oh God, what did I just done? And his own personal common sense took place. But
or people around him probably told him, what did you do? What did you just say?
Well, it's the heat of the moment. I mean, it's you're coming off this emotional high that you stepped in and orchestrated to help win the game. You're not really thinking whole big picture, rational logic, all that at that moment.
It's a polarizing.
It was a trap. It was a gotcha question. It had to be asked.
Yeah,
you're on the spot. I don't blame him for answering it incorrectly. You're running on adrenaline still. You got the emotional high. You got the endorphins going through you. I mean, you're gonna be like, yeah, let's go run through a brick wall now. So I don't blame him.
But he made a polarizing decision that, quite frankly, is gonna. Some people obviously support it, others don't. I mean, that's
gonna dog him.
And that's
going to dog him.
Yeah, no question. That's part of the resume. That's part of the legacy. I mean, my goodness, they definitely brought it up on the team.
That's not fair.
But it's part of the story.
It's part of the story. But that should not be a leading part of the story. That problem is it's going to be recency bias here. That's going to dog what he did last year.
Right.
It's going to overshadow it.
Here's what I don't agree on is how it won't overshadow it permanently, right? And let me tell you what I draw from, because there's actual history here, Drew. First of all, for my money, sometimes a breakup is best for both sides. I think this is best for Mikey Keene. I think this is best for UCF moving forward, as it would turn out too, because if the biggest thing they have to rebuild on offense, in most of the opinions of this panel, if not all of us, is the offensive line, then Mikey Keene should be out like a fat kid in dodgeball, and he's going to serve himself well doing it. Let me be clear. That all being said, the reason why I don't think this will matter as much, Drew, is, well, let's take it to a practical example. Something I saw personally happen with the pushback of one Leonard Fournette not playing in the Citrus Bowl under Coach Ogeron with LSU. Why would I mention that? That has nothing to do with UCF. That's a great question, guys. Here's where it does matter. 5 years later, in that very same room, I'm talking with Kurt Ferentz, who's the Iowa head coach, and then the University of Kentucky's head coach, Mark Stoops, I think it is. But the punchline is both of them were able to comment on how commonplace that players opting out of that game was just 5 years later.
It was a game changer.
We're going to have that very same thing happen.
Well, McCaffrey too. Kid McCaffrey of Stanford.
Right, but I wasn't in the room for that one. Work with me, Eric.
Oh, it's all about you. Gotcha. I understand.
It's the Kyle show.
I got you.
Right, exactly. No, but no, you're right. Run CMC was another example too. I think it's different with McCaffrey. Honestly, I make the joke about me not being there. I think McCaffrey's different because he was going to be so obviously a game changer in the NFL, where there were still some critics, right or wrong, about Fournette's chances in the league. That all being said, I say the above to say this, just those 5 years later, both those coaches I mentioned, in particular Ferentz, who's the oldest active coach in coaching Iowa still to this day, having the same attitude, that it's commonplace. Other coaches have resisted it, all that other stuff. So I say all that to say, in the next few years, fans will come around to see that what Mikey Keene did will be commonplace at major programs. And in some cases, in the environment we're living in, this is going to be correct. The thing that will be scrutinized overly so later will be that one series that Thomas Castellanos played in the Temple game that was completely unnecessary in the grand scheme of things as it would work out, right? So at the end of the day, Mikey Keene, I like I said, sometimes the breakup is best for both parties, and I think this is one of those instances.
I do agree with you, Kyle. This will be more common. I think the difference is, though, bowl games, like it or not, like Drew mentioned earlier, there's a lot of people who are like, whatever, it's a bowl game, it's an exhibition, that's fine. You should skip that. There's going to be people, like there were former players that were outspoken on social media that you're passing up on a chance to win a conference championship game.
These are former players with sour grapes that didn't have the option of transferring either.
These are former players that played during a time that the red shirt rules were different.
Bingo.
But okay,
change.
I'm glad you're both are bringing this up. Because I do agree with you. This will continue. And there will be players that will skip on playoff games when it expands because of the same rules. So I'm glad you're bringing this up because I do agree with that. Here's the thing. The only players that are owed an explanation is the teammates. If the seniors on that team are cool with Mikey Keene's decision, then that's it. Those are the ones that matter, not the people outside, because those are the players that are trying to win a championship. So that's to me. But anyway, we've spent a ton of time on it on that.
I just want to throw that it is not coincidence that the new portal date starts now. This would also be the time of players opting out of bowls. It's the same concept.
Right. And I think it'll continue probably even with the playoff expanding. Last thing, and then we'll move on. For all parties, UCF, Keene, everybody, would they have just been better off announcing early in the year, hey, man, I'm going to transfer after this year, but I'm going to stick around. I'll help as best as I can. I'll play in 4 games. Because I feel like it just kept hovering, man. It kept hovering. Why can't we just be honest? Like, everybody was the worst secret in the world, Drew. You mentioned it. Why don't we just come out and say, you know what? I'm going to leave after the year, but I'm going to be the backup, and I'll play in 4 games.
Because you don't do that. A good teammate doesn't do that. You're in your last year of your contract in the NFL. Yeah, I'm going to go test free agency when the season ends. How do you think the rest of the teammates are going to feel about that?
I think they already knew that, though. You don't think the players knew that?
But it doesn't matter. You don't go out. You don't air that laundry. You don't make it public. You put your head down. Because remember, he's also auditioning for another job somewhere else, and you don't want to bring that dirty laundry to the surface like that.
Oh yeah,
but it brought to the surface at the end.
Well, that's actually when you're supposed to.
Yeah, the only championship week.
Well,
Championship week is better than the entire season, Elo. And the NFL example is different because, hey, listen, if they do well at the end of the day, the team may end up paying him. That's different.
All right.
I think the JRP Mikey Keene debate would have been much more heated had he announced he was leaving early, because then we would have known earlier, like, oh my gosh, Gus like drove away Mikey, and that would get people in Mikey's camp.
I think that's still out there though. I think that's out there.
Now
regardless.
It's going to be because
you don't want opponents.
You can't. It's over. You can't argue that part.
You don't want opponents knowing that stuff either.
All right, that's fair. That's a good point. So how about this? Let me ask you this. If you're Gus, would you do it again? Would you come to an agreement with a player to stick and moving forward? Hey, if you could stick around, we won't play you more than 4 games. Is that a good idea, or are you better off just letting the guy go? If you
imagine what would happen if they let him go. How would that have worked out?
Maybe
what happened on the field speaks for itself.
Maybe you would have gotten Thomas better prepared for playing.
You can add a few more losses to UCF's record.
Correct.
All right, moving forward.
And not every quarterback is Mikey Keene who can slot into the position as a true freshman and at least hold the fort down.
Well,
everyone has
I think this portion pretty much tells you that this topic the quarterback room will define the 2022 season. All right, but he's not the only one that has entered the portal. Arguably, his favorite target entered the portal, didn't he, Bryson?
Yes, I was initially going to save him for last, but all right, we'll talk about him now. He was named All AAC second team this season after catching 73 receptions for 725 receiving yards, 5 TDs, and he rushed for 23 times for 222 rushing yards. He has one last season of eligibility that he's going to use to play elsewhere. It is wide receiver Ryan O'Keefe.
All right, I have no problem with players who played for 4 years at a school decide, hey, I want to try something different for my last year of eligibility. I've got no problems with that. Ryan O'Keefe has left it all on the field. He owes this program nothing at this point. He's been an excellent teammate. When they said they had to find ways to get him the ball, he made himself available and worked to be the best guy he could be on the field. We saw the signs of his breakout in the Gus Malzahn system in 2021 spring game. When Jalen Robinson struggled, he excelled. We saw that transition onto the field. And then fast forward a year, you've got Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson brought in, and then you start seeing O'Keefe's presence on the field start to shrink. Not that he's not good, because that's not true at all, but just the dynamics of the team have changed. The talent pool has improved. And you're going to see this continue to happen. So, this is actually a great time for Ryan to say, you know what, I want to go try something different. My favorite quarterback's gone. I'm going to be gone. Still sky's the limit for a speedster like O'Keefe. But the thing is, I'm not overly surprised that he left, especially how he was starting to fade as the season went on when Kobe Hudson was back and healthy and everything. And I'm not surprised that, as a senior with 4 years, that he wants to go try something different. Godspeed.
No, listen, Drew, everything you said is right. I don't have a problem with it either. I just don't know that it's the best move for him. As far as a blow to UCF, pretty bleeding huge. I think this is probably the biggest offensive hit outside of maybe when Isaiah Bowser decides if he decides not to play in the bowl game, to go to the NFL. That might be the biggest wound to the offense in general. But until that happens, if it does, O'Keefe, in my mind, is the biggest impact, no question. You mentioned yourself the way he can make plays basically anywhere in space. Sure, he struggled with drops at times and had an injury issue early in the year, but at the end of the day, Drew, Ryan O'Keefe's a big deal. Newsflash, he pretty fast. That being said, his size leaves something to be desired. How much impact he can make at another place that would get him more shine for draft status or any of that. I don't know that's the best fit. I would hate to see what happened to him. The same being that what happened to Jalen Robinson with his departure from UCF. I think he was doing well, especially with UCF emerging into the Big 12, taking the G5 label off of him, have an opportunity to put more quality film in against Big 12 opponents in an offense with which he's familiar and certain to get a number of touches. We cannot guarantee that as football analysts, at his next stop. Granted, we don't know what that is yet. Maybe he'll go somewhere and I'll be like, you know what? That's a fit. Never mind. I was wrong. I have to see what that fit is first. But yeah, this is a big fat hairy deal. And, of course I wish his success, but I am concerned for him just the same way I was Jalen Robinson this time last year.
Yeah.
Do you think that perhaps Ryan O'Keefe may follow Mikey where he goes?
It's possible. I mean, I think O'Keefe is best served at a G5 school where you can be an undersized speedster and function really well. Keene has, I think, a little more flexibility. There's some low end Power 5 conference schools such as the Arizona schools that can maybe use a player like that their programs are kind of in disarray as it is.
You're calling for the Noah Vedral route. Okay.
Well,
there you go.
Yeah, go home. There's nothing wrong with going home.
Who said there was?
All right. Bryson, let's go ahead and name the rest of the guys that enter the portal because Drew has informed us he will not burn his red shirt and stick around for a third segment. So go ahead and give us the rest of the names.
All right, we have a pair of defensive players. First off, we returned to the secondary with junior cornerback Devontae Brown. And then we have the only returner in the linebacker core, at least that had a major amount of playing time from last season. He was one of the team captains, even though he missed 3 games. He was second on the team in total and solo tackles. It is linebacker Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste.
All right, I think Devontae Brown is the largest loss on this team. And part of that is because of the defensive position that he's in. You're a corner. Newt Wilson has declared for the NFL draft. Mm-hmm. There is not much else there. You have Corey Thornton, who's been very hot and cold. Brandon Adams, very hot and cold. Devontae Brown was your best, corner on this team. And, the struggles that they had was more scheme than talent. So him and declaring with 2 years left of eligibility, that hurts because there's not much left. Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste obviously dealt with some injuries throughout the year. He has really grown, taken over for Eric Gilliard last year and really rose as a leader in the defense. But much like Ryan O'Keefe, 4-year player, has that 1 year left of eligibility. That I kind of give the a salute of respect. And unlike O'Keefe, Jean-Baptiste can go anywhere and fit in. He can go to a P5 and work in it. He's got the size, he's got the power, he's got enough speed that he
can make the impact that Tatum Bethune did for Florida State. I feel like that's a very similar move here.
I think Bethune was a better player, but Jean-Baptiste has a lot of upside. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet.
Good call.
He dealt with some injuries earlier this year, and then just was never quite the same after that. Jason Johnson just exploded and became the tackle machine that he was expected to be coming out of the FCS ranks. But the reason why I don't view Jean-Baptiste as the biggest loss is look what Gus and his team has done over the past 2 years in fixing holes in the linebacking core. They're really good at it. They had Bryson Armstrong last year, who would have had even better stats if it wasn't for the season-ending injury, and Jason Johnson and Walter Yates this year, who have done really well. So I have very high hopes of them being able to cover the loss of Jean-Baptiste more so than the loss of Devontae Brown.
Well, there's a bit of a misnomer in that, pointing that out, Drew, because a lot of the secondary on the defense was experienced already and had stayed around for the previous year, so there was less need to get new guys to come in. That being said, this will be a very interesting experiment to see if what they did with the defensive front expands to the secondary. I think Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste as an individual player is a bigger loss than Devontae Brown, but I like the point you make in the aggregate that overall, because the depth is going to drop so quickly in the secondary, that you can make the argument that he is the bigger loss, because having Brown back would at least given you something for the secondary to lean on. Kind of like Richie Grant staying around one more year with all the guys that had left before his year and him eventually becoming an Atlanta Falcon, right? So I get where you're going. I think Baptiste is a bigger loss as a singular player. But obviously, those are two huge impacts on defense. The part of the ball that many fans would think that the bigger struggle currently exists, right?
Well, and you mentioned it, Drew. Divaad Wilson on Wednesday announced he's declaring for the NFL draft. Kyle, you cover the NFL on a daily basis. What was your reaction to that? Is he ready for the NFL? Is this kind of like, hey, I'm just going to get out and make some money? I mean, what was your reaction to it?
For my money, the safety position is one that's lacking in the NFL in general, so the bar is lower. And this isn't me saying I think that Divaad Wilson won't make it. I have no problems with Newt trying to get that bag. And, I think he's still going to be a third-day draft pick at the end of the day. That all being said, the safety position is more about intelligence than athleticism. What he's going to have to try to prove is that he's smart enough to step into a scheme at a whole other gear in speed than he would be currently, certainly playing a majority of G5 opponents in his tenure at UCF. That being said, like I said, the safety position, the bar is lower because the amount of good safeties there are is relatively low. Teams typically don't want to pay a lot for a safety compared to, let's say, a star edge rusher or anything like that. I don't necessarily dislike the decision.
So here's a question I want to pose to you both, Drew and Kyle. So UCF got 6 interceptions over the course of the entire season. 5 of those interceptions are now gone. 3 from Newt Wilson and 2 from Devontae Brown.
Well, yeah, I mean, we go back to scheme there.
Correct.
When you play that far back, you're not going to get many interceptions. The last one against Tulane was because Michael Pratt got hit on the throw, so that's a credit to the defensive line. I believe it was Tremont Morris-Brash that hit him.
Correct.
That caused Duck to go in the air, and it was a gift wrap to Devontae Brown. So if you play that far back, it's like, think about it, investing in stocks. You bump up, you're investing. There's risk, but there's reward. If you play further back, you're not taking as much risk from the standpoint of the guys aren't going to get over the top of you, but there's less reward. You're not going to cause turnovers.
I love the way we both use the term risk reward to explain this, Drew. This makes me very happy.
It's like we know each other or something.
Well, with all due respect to all those names we just mentioned, we did a great job breaking down every name that's moved on via the portal or so far as of Wednesday afternoon as we record this at 4:00. So if you hear other names that you're like, wait, what about that's when we recorded on that. But to me, guys, and this will be the last thing we discuss before we move on, Monday, longtime commit offensive lineman Jamal Merriweather flipped his commitment from UCF to Georgia. Normally I make a big deal of that. The only reason I make a big deal of this and why I think this is the most significant news of all the guys Monday, you two, Drew and Kyle, have discussed about all the flaws in the offensive line and how they got to address that to be competitive in the Big 12 moving forward. And I think that is a huge question. As of right now, the only high school commitment that UCF has right now is Jonathan Klein. Okay. And in the 20 and only signed one high school commit in the 22 class in Caden Kittler. Probably suggests they're going to go to the portal to address the offensive line, but I think that's always a kind of a risk reward type of deal. We don't know. I'm concerned about the offensive line, and listen, you understand the young man. He's going to Georgia, it's the best team in the country. He's from Georgia. I get that, but I'm concerned. Can the staff get the right offensive lineman to help this program move in the Big 12, guys? Last thoughts.
Well, it's going to take time. This is going to be the area that they're going to hurt the most. Even guys they have on there right now, they're a little undersized. You're going to need some beef. You're talking Midwestern teams, in the Great Plains. A lot of corn-fed kids there. They got size. It's going to take time to adjust your personnel to fit that. They don't have it now. They're not going to have it by next year. That's going to be the biggest area, and one reason why John Rice Plumlee announcing that he's coming back for 2023. He did formally announce that on his social media he is coming back. But a player like him who can tuck and run when the offensive line breaks down has value. The truth is, it's tough to recruit offensive linemen. It's always been tough. George O'Leary, that was his thing. But even then, it was still a challenge. There's plenty of skill position players in Florida. The challenge is finding the offensive lineman. You've got to look elsewhere. And as we know with the portal, it's a crapshoot. You really don't know what you're getting.
And how well they're going to fit once you get them, too. I mean, Terrence Lewis was the conversation we had. That's a perfect fit. Worse over, Drew, to your point, yeah, I think they're going to attack the transfer portal, and they need more recruits to have in the cupboard, because here's the thing, buddy. Sam Jackson's gone. What veteran presence are they going to have other than Matt Lee? That's a tough question to answer. So, at the end of the day, I think Eric's right. I think there's a big impact, but at the end of the day, I am not going to rule out Gus recruiting like his hair is on fire and putting some beef on the grill there for that fire to get something cooking in the trenches. Will they solve for everything in 1 year? That is a tall ask. But if they can account for 60% of the line to be, quote, Big 12 sized, Big 12 caliber, Power 5 caliber, however you want to put it, that would be a success in my mind.
Yeah, you're looking at potentially 4 or 5 players plus that were in the 2 deep that aren't going to be there next year. That's a lot. And
you thought chemistry and gelling was an issue this year.
Well, and that's going to be an issue. And again, we don't know as of this recording. The Big 12 schedule could come out any day, any week now. No matter what it looks like, it's going to be the most difficult schedule in the history of this program. 6 road games, we know that. 5 in conference, plus the road trip at Boise State. We've talked a lot on this show about growing pains with the basketball programs going to the Big 12. Maybe some of us better start accepting the fact there's going to be some growing pains on the football side. I think some people have kind of been in denial on that, but I think this year, going into next year, maybe it's proven, we've shown that maybe we're going to have some growing pains going into that Big 12 next year, that maybe don't be surprised if this team is going to have to fight just to get to be bowl eligible next year.
Well, and the truth is, in many circles, 7 wins is okay in a power conference. Remember, UCF is a big fish in a small pond. It's easy to get 10 wins.
Yeah.
In a G5 conference.
Well, and that's what we heard about that. Why UCF didn't make the playoff is like, yes, on a 1-game scenario, you can compete with a Power 5, but can you compete with them throughout the duration of a season? That's going to be the challenge as you make this, if you adjust to this league.
Yeah, I think 7-8 wins is going to be your ceiling next year.
Yeah,
and that's ceiling, not. I think realistically it's going to be 5 to 6. But as we know, there's a lot of 50-50 balls. It really depends on how the schedule fully shakes out. We know most of the teams that we're going to see, but we don't know exactly how it's going to play out as far as when and where they play. I think that's going to matter as far as their ability to put together a winning team.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Drew, we're going to let you go. We're not going to burn your red shirt. We're going to be much more responsible as you opt out of the last segment here, sir. But thank you as always.
Yeah, I'm going to save the rest of my eligibility because the transfer portal already said we don't want you.
Well, then you better. At least we brought you back. Yeah, we got you back. We kept your scholarship for you, Drew. Thanks for joining us, Drew.
All right. Till next time.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. Kyle's going to stay with us as Bryson. We'll talk some basketball. Some good news on the men's side. Hey, women. Ooh, ugh. Plus volleyball. Once again, season ends in the second round and an end of a legacy. We'll discuss what that all means when we wrap up this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. And welcome back here to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, final segment of the show. Eric Lopez here with Kyle Nash and Bryson Turner. We're going to talk some hoops. First, let's start on the positive. The men with an overtime win over Samford. Old A-Sun battle there. Old A-Sun rivals back in the way days there. Kyle, you were there for the overtime thriller. You were working extra time. Your thoughts on the game? UCF, boy, it was tight. Very fortunate to win the game. Samford had a chance to win in regulation. Really nice team, back and forth game. Your thoughts there, UCF pulling out the victory?
Yeah, and listen, both teams definitely had a shot to close it out in regulation. And listen, credit to Samford for all the times that Coach Johnny Dawkins in post-game has talked about the importance of foul shots. The Bulldogs put on a clinic there, Elo. The first 12 shots, including all of the free throws in the first halves, were makes. keeping that game close. I think it was 33-31 at the half, something like that. Most of that was due to their work hitting the foul line and shooting jump shots and everything from a distance. They weren't going to beat anybody with their size. They know that going in, but even their center pulled up for 2 3-pointers of his own on the evening just to keep people honest. Now, say what you will in that scenario about Logan Dye, but when you see the guy sitting back and he looks him in the face and pops the 3, no, he made 3 of them. I beg your pardon. That's the kind of versatility in team. This is the kind of stuff you come to know and love from an NBA team. Everybody can chuck it from 3, but not everybody's going to necessarily battle in the paint. That being said, UCF did have their share of free throws and did their right. I believe it was 23 for 34. Yes, it was. So a lot of the misses came in the overtime period. Both teams were obviously exhausted and struggling at the end there, but give credit. CJ Kelly, once again, doing his thing as a leader, made a huge shot. He got the N1, but missed the free throw. That's what kept this game close, though. A lot of back and forth in the overtime. It ran pretty long because both teams were in double bonuses. But get this stat for the Bulldogs: 24-29 from the free throw line. That's how they got most of their 77 points, Elo. No question. But their free throw shooting, as far as makes, tailed off in overtime as well. By the end of the game in its entirety, they had 3 players foul out. To see a team like this outlast a team that not only averaged 86 points a game in regulation, by the way, going into this contest, they also averaged, according to Coach Dawkins in the postgame, about 27 free throw shots a game. So to see this group outlast this group with pure resolve was fun to watch. And shock, here's a shock: Taylor Hendricks, a big part of it, Elo, from the field, missing precisely 1 shot.
He's pretty good at this game of basketball there. Couple thoughts here, Kyle. You obviously you spent a lot of time talking to Coach Dawkins after the game. First, status on CJ Walker, who didn't play on Sunday in the win against Samford. Obviously, you got Tarleton at home coming up next Sunday. Mm-hmm. Then you go on the road for the first time all year at Ole Miss before going to Sunrise, Florida, to play Missouri. What's the status of CJ Walker, what Coach Dawkins told you?
Based on what he said, it feels like reading the tea leaves that this is an element of load management. In a game like this in particular, where size isn't going to be the hugest factor, it might have been one where he opted to float CJ Walker. Yeah, he's probably the most versatile shooter of the big men, but really in that game, you're looking for Lehat Tune and Michael Durr to take care of business and dominate in the paint, which both guys did and fulfilled their job. For me, the test was going to be the guards and trying to and the guards and the forwards, the 1, 2, and 3 spots to kind of attack and grab rebounds and use their size in the backcourt. UCF had to do a lot of rotating defensively and a lot of movement. And if you have a guy that's limited with a leg injury or trying to come back from something, good time to hold out CJ Walker in that particular instance. And of course, we mentioned Darius Johnson as well coming back. This would have been his second game back from injury. You had asked about why he didn't start, Elo, during the game. I can tell you this is kind of a thing that Coach Dawkins does when he has reliable starters, or I should say reliable backups who can start. He likes to give guys a chance to find their sea legs and get things going, and that's what Darius Johnson did in this game for certain. And, when Samford came out with a full court press early, he and Jalen Young were both there to handle the ball, minimize mistakes, and make all that kind of work. So at the end of the day, this was certainly, this isn't one of those where 1 or 2 players kind of dominate the evening. This was certainly a true team win for the Knights on the floor there. Had a number of double-digit scorers, on the night to kind of.
You like the depth. You like the depth. In other words, I think Coach Dawkins, they like the depth they have,
right?
And it's going to save them. They're 6-2 on the year. They'll host Tarleton State, I guess, is their name now. I thought they were Tarleton, but whatever.
State, whatever.
Yeah. 6-2, noon tip before going on the road next week at Ole Miss for the men's side. The women's side. Took the first loss of the year on Saturday, unfortunately set the tone for a long day of UCF athletic losses. Women's were at Auburn and lost by 40 points, their first loss of the year. Cover your ears, Kyle. You don't want to hear this stat I have for you. UCF, the last time they lost in women's basketball by 40 points or more in a game, 2016, when they lost to South Florida by 45 points in Tampa. That was the year before that head coach who's now in Athens coached here.
And I had commented with Jeff the previous podcast with this game upcoming that this would be the first test of a team with dominant size on the roster. In and of itself, they have two players that are 6'5". For context, that is tall as I am. Okay. So yeah. And at the end of the day, this is going to be the one way you can overwhelm this group is if you can outbody them. Listen, Destiny Thomas had her 8 rebounds. She did her thing, but the next best rebounder was Rachel Ranke, who's a guard. Granted, she's 6 foot. The top rebounder for Auburn was another 6 foot guard. The boards was what made the difference in this game. Elo, the Knights only managed 33, while Auburn had 51 total. So definitely the boards being crashed. I think this might be the first game, certainly the first game where the difference was this dominant against UCF, and also shooting not going very well from beyond the arc as well. Versatility was not on display in this game. Heck, Auburn even got to the free throw line at a regular clip. They had 19 free throw shots. UCF didn't manage to get to the line a lot. They got there 28 times for 20 of the points. So they had that going for them. They were trying to attack, but at the end of the day, just not enough to really get any true firepower going on the evening.
Well, and it's going to be interesting. I'm curious how they bounce back and respond this Sunday. You're going to be there. UCF's hosting Seton Hall out of the Big East. Last year they played Seton Hall at Seton Hall. UCF won the game, but obviously it's a completely different deal now. UCF is a completely different team. And then after Seton Hall, UCF goes back to the road to an SEC location at Tennessee to play at Pat Summitt Court. Yeah. Kyle, this is not an easy stretch here at all. A team that's banged up roster-wise. I think we said this a few weeks back. Can this team last with all the injuries they've had? They're going to get challenged here in the next couple of games. Seton Hall, that's a big home game for them. I'm curious how they respond.
Yeah, and listen, Seton Hall, at least in the opinion of their coach, had a shot to win that game and probably should have, like I said, in the opinion of their coach. So with all that being said, that was a close game. I feel like that's one that could have gone either way too. But that was also a road game for the Knights. We'll see how the Seton Hall ladies travel and what they have to bring to the table. I haven't had a chance to look over their lineup yet. I'm sure.
Well, we know this. They beat a team that team from Athens earlier this year in a tournament. And that we're familiar with that roster, aren't we, Kyle?
Just a little bit, buddy. Just a little bit. That being said, I don't think Seton Hall is as big as the Auburn group by any stretch of the imagination.
No. Plus, I read about that Seton Hall, Georgia. There was some wild officiating going on over there in the islands, Virgin Islands. I think they were playing over there. But tough chin to we'll see how they come out here against Seton Hall on Sunday. Big game. What time is tip? That's a doubleheader day here we got of hoops, don't we?
Yeah, the men tip off at noon for the Tarleton State game, and the ladies tip off at 3:00.
3:00. Kyle Nash gonna be there during the late window there. That's a rare 3:00 Sunday game. That should be a good one, Kyle. There, sir. So, fact, that's a fact. We're gonna let you go now. We're gonna let you opt out of the rest of this segment and preserve the remaining eligibility that you have and get you set for that women's game, sir.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the consideration. I know that Bryson will handle the final segment.
Oh, we're burning his red shirt. It's being done.
Yeah, well, I'm certain he'll do a lot better than other guys whose red shirt was burned. And I'm taking a shot at Drew. I'm kidding. No. But yeah, Bryson will take care of this segment just fine. And looking forward to the game on Sunday. Until next time, gentlemen, class dismissed.
That's Kyle Nash, ladies and gentlemen, as we'll let him go here, Bryson. But Bryson, the women's basketball wasn't the only women's team from UCF to lose on Saturday, right? During the football game and then after the football game, UCF Volleyball season came to an end, losing in the second round to Penn State in 4 sets, ending their season at 28-2. They had won the first round match on Friday, sweeping Yale in 3 sets, which was expected. But obviously it comes to the end of a legacy there. McKenna Melville, the greatest UCF volleyball player ever, playing her final match as a Knight. In fact, she even posted on Instagram on Tuesday pretty much saying she's done as a player, which we all knew. She's going to go into teaching and be a high school coach and a teacher, just like her mom was in Minnesota. I wouldn't be surprised if she moves to Minnesota eventually to do that, although Florida certainly could be an option in that. Last game for Amber Olson, two-time setter of the year. Kari Zumak, obviously as well, among other the seniors, Dressy Pass, etc. And unfortunately, Bryson, UCF got off to a great start in that first set, won the first set against Penn State. Penn State, though, made some adjustments and took the next three sets. UCF made some mental errors, was held to about, 229 hitting, one of their lowest performances of the year. And McKenna even said on the postgame when I talked to her after the match on the postgame press conference, Penn State was so big, biggest team they've seen all year. And Penn State was just able to overpower them with their size and power. And as a result, UCF season comes to an end once again in the second round.
Well, sir, history does not repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. It is now currently 4:07 Eastern time as we're recording this. This time, 25 years ago, Renata Menchikova and Tyra Harper were beginning their final collegiate volleyball match in the NCAA tournament against another Big Ten team, Wisconsin. And now we see McKenna Melville and Amber Olson, another great UCF volleyball duo, and their career at a Big Ten court against Penn State. I actually saw there was a tweet 35 minutes ago that Kari Zumak said that where she says, "So does college volleyball just die now that McKenna is retired? Who's going to carry the sport or lead the nation and everything?" So it's a blow. I mean, it's Penn State. It's a great opponent. It's Big Ten territory. Big Ten. I mean, you can't really have an introduction for Big Ten volleyball. And it just ended up being a bad case. I mean, second round, you're still not getting past that. It has to be an unfortunate way to end McKenna and Amber's career. But I don't know, Eric. I would argue that this was. I remember we said last season that that UCF came the closest that it had ever been to a berth in the Sweet 16.
They were up 2-1 at UCLA. Had a lead in the fourth set, couldn't hold it, lost in 5 sets. That was the closest, yes, if any UCF team in the Division I era had come to this round of 16.
Now that said, during this volleyball matchup, UCF, I mean, they didn't get more, didn't get less than 18 points in a set, even though the set loss is a bit different. Do you think that they were closer this season, at least as far as in match, than they were last time against UCLA?
I would say UCLA was a little tighter, but I mean, again, UCF led in the third set, led in the fourth set. They led 13-9, led 12-9, couldn't hold it. Give Penn State credit. Katie Clark, a transfer from TCU, was fantastic for Penn State. 10 kills for them. Had a ton of blocks for them. Cash Williams had 15 kills. Zoe Worthington had 13 kills. What's tough is, I thought UCF had a good shot in this regional because they were the more experienced team. This is a young Penn State team that hadn't been to the Sweet 16 since 2019, had 8 new players, 4 freshmen, 4 transfers. Really, they had to build it from the ground up, and a credit to them and their first-year head coach who took over for the legendary Coach Rose there at Penn State. But, UCF just couldn't, little minor mistakes, mental thing. You wonder if you're playing a team that's bigger, does that get to your head a little bit? You try to do too much. You don't know if that played a role in it. But, listen, that was, this, covered the team all year. I covered them all year. McKenna and Amber came back in part because they wanted to get to this round of 16 and beyond. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for them. And then it stings a little bit, especially when your rival, Houston, goes through, wins the Omaha Regional, beating South Dakota in 5 sets. And then comes from behind to beat Auburn in 5 sets. They're going to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1994. They're out in Palo Alto to play Samford, and they get to the Sweet 16. So it stings a little bit. And you reference Kari's questions there. I would that's going to be a big question now for this program is what happens after McKenna. Life after McKenna. That's going to be the question as UCF now volleyball goes into the Big 12, which is considered right now maybe either number one, or depending on what you look at, number one or definitely the number 2 conference in the sport behind the Big 10. So it's going to get tougher.
To rub salt in the wound, or at least it rubs salt in the wound, Houston also produced probably the volleyball highlight of the
play of the year. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
with the great play with their great libero who won the libero of the year. They're the story of the year, and they won the automatic bid in the league. It's just kind of wild. But
yeah, it's I will say this though. So the AVCA all region teams were announced. McKenna Melville, for the 5th year in a row, was named to the all Southeast region, Southeast all region team. But she was also named the Southeast region's player of the year this season. You know who actually got the coach of the year for the Southeast region?
David Rear, Houston.
Yes, sir. But McKenna wasn't alone. Claudia Dillon was named to the all-region Southeast region honorable mention team. So, and she is, I believe, is slated to come back for next season. I know we mentioned this a little bit on Night Shift when we recap this game. So if you want to listen to the whole conversation, go and watch that. It's on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe. But the fact that that middles, Abby Hansen and Claudia Dillon, have another season of eligibility in this Big 12 is pretty huge, considering that that you're losing McKenna and Amber, right?
It helps. That's going to be part of their strength. Obviously, we'll see what they do. We got Heidi Bondi back at, you got Wilson back, but but who knows? We'll see. I mean, they're about to enter the transfer portal season themselves. So I have a feeling they're going to be aggressive on the portal, and I think you'll see some new faces there as well. So we'll see what the roster looks like. It'll be a younger roster, and it's going to be a different roster. And again, you lose the greatest player in the history of the program, one of the greatest volleyball players of all time. McKenna Melville ends up in the top 10, I think 9th all-time in kills, number 1 at UCF, number 3 all-time in digs. It's going to be strange, Mr. Bryson Turner, when you're at the venue in the next fall, and there's no number 20 with the name Melville in the back playing there. That's going to be a little strange. But let's congratulate her on an incredible career. Without question, I think she's the greatest player in the history of the program. You mentioned the 25 years ago with Harper and Menchikova. It's kind of spooky. They both end their careers 25 years apart in a second round against a powerhouse Big Ten program. But McKenna Melville, what she's done for this program on and off the court, you just can't duplicate that. I think everybody that had a chance to watch her in person or cover her in person or meet her will understand that she'll be successful as a teacher and as I said, and a coach in the high school level. But we're not. UCF will have other great players, no doubt, but there's never going to be another McKenna Melville. That's a once in a generation.
I'm sure a lot of people back then said there wouldn't be another Renata Menchikova. I'm sure it's going to. So
it took 25 years.
It took 25 years though. So So we'll see about that. We're gonna have to wait a while. I think at the very least we're gonna have to wait a long time before we see anybody even close to what McKenna did. And not to mention, you mentioned her status at digs. McKenna is also in the top 10 all time in service aces and block solos. So, I mean, there really isn't another player quite like her, and if we do see a player like McKenna Melville again, it isn't going to happen for a very long time. Not to mention,
and I want you to bring this up because you're a student. She won the Pegasus of the award for the student. Explain again the impact. Her, as great as she was on the court, off the court, and one of the best athletes ever.
Yes, she was one of the students that was awarded with the Order of Pegasus, which is the most prestigious and significant award a student can get at UCF. Like if I could get it if I qualified for it. Basically, that's kind of the whole idea. And so the fact that she was able to get that really shows that it's not just on the court that she was successful. She was successful off the court too. McKenna Melville is a special kind of individual. Like, there's a reason why you saw, like, when you look at the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel and look through all of our volleyball videos, McKenna Melville is in a lot of them. And that is, and she really is able to explain the game so well. And it really makes a lot of sense why she wants to go into coaching and at the high school level, just like her mother did. And I think she's going to have success with it. She's a communicator. She's a leader. And that's going to, I think, translate to major success for her wherever she decides to coach, whether it's going to be in Florida or Minnesota or wherever she wants to go in the country. I'm sure any high school would love to have her as their volleyball coach. But you mentioned, Eric, how weird it would be to not see a number 20 with Melville on the back of the venue next year. Let's not forget, we're also not going to see somebody with the name Olson on the back of their jersey for the first time in a long time, starting next season.
Yeah, Amber Olson done. Aaron Olson, obviously her sister before that, is the setters. They're going to have to replace her. Do they? They got Abby Chalmers, who they redshirted this year. Do they go with her? Do they go with somebody from the portal? A lot of questions with the team. But you're right, Olson and Melville, they're going to be linked together throughout their careers. It's just going to be different. It's going to be different, man. I hope we also acknowledge them, maybe celebrate them here down the road here. I don't know if they'll be around in the spring or not, but it's kind of, I felt bad that their career kind of ended quietly because it got distracted. It was kind of under the umbrella of football, right? Like, everybody was focused on the football game with the championship game. And so volleyball kind of took a back seat, unfortunately, because that was a memorable deal. But you and I will never forget, we were both at the venue, which turns out was McKenna and Amber's last home match at the venue of that 5-setter against Houston. That's a heck of a way to go out for them in their last match in the venue. I'll never forget that.
I will never forget it either. I think, like, as far as in the clubhouse is concerned, I think it's the UCF Athletics game of the year so far. And to see all the seniors go out that way. I know we talk about McKenna and Amber a lot because of the contributions they made to the university, but let's not forget that let's not forget the other seniors that had their last match in that one. Kari Zumach, transferred in from Indiana. I mean, the story with her, she posted a video on Twitter where she talked about how much it meant to her to be on this team after it seems like there was some mental health struggles with her at Indiana. And so to see not only in the post-game pressers that we've talked to her with, but in that video, to see how much she seems so bright, and to have the fact that program brought that to her, I think means more than pretty much anything that you can see on the court statistically.
UCF volleyball finishes the year 28-2. They will name in about a week, next week, the All-Americans. We expect McKenna to be an All-American once again on that, and UCF begins life in the Big 12. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if they end up in the final top 25 rankings. We'll see. One team on campus that we know is guaranteed of the top 25, Bryson, is women's soccer.
Yes, the United Soccer coaches have just released now that the College Cup has concluded, they have released their final rankings for the 2022 season, and UCF women's soccer team, who took the national champion UCLA Bruins 2 penalty kicks, ended up the season at the number 23 spot. So I think that the coaches probably saw that performance against UCLA, and I think and gave them recognition for that by giving them a top 25 spot now that it's all wrapped up.
No question about it. UCLA won the national title Monday night in a wild national championship, beating North Carolina, who UCF also played during the season up in Chapel Hill. North Carolina won that match. UCLA was down 2-0 with 10 minutes to go in regulation. Came back, scored 2 goals, sent it to overtime. They scored a game-winning goal right before the last overtime session to beat North Carolina 3-2. So UCLA, you're right, Bryson. UCF women's soccer ended up losing to the eventual national champions in the second round on PKs. Softball, remember, lost to the eventual national champions Oklahoma in the super regionals. We just run into national championship teams, man.
It seems so. I mean, I think this really shows that even though they didn't get past the second round, that I think that if they had a better draw, like, for example, say and maybe if things went a little differently with the PKs against Memphis in the American Athletic Conference tournament, we probably could have seen them get a better draw and perhaps get further into the tournament. I think that the fact that they took the national champions to PKs really shows what they could have done if they had not gone up against that kind of juggernaut there. But it is what it is. I think that considering that so many players came back for their final year to be with Tiffany Roberts-Zahadak, and of course Roberts-Zahadak was off for a few games with the national team, so you had to have Tim Zahadak take over for a few games, and Kristen Scott was gone for a few games with injury. I mean, it's kind of amazing that this season ended up being the season that Tiffany Roberts-Zahadak finally makes it back to the NCAA tournament. And because I think this team very much well earned it. And so now they have to reload for their first season in the Big 12. They've already made an announcement, because we talked about the transfer portal last semester. It's not just football that started that. Women's soccer managed to announce they landed a defender midfielder transfer from Stetson named Kylie Thelen, who was named the All-ASUN third team as a defender. So already Tiffany Roberts-Zahadak is hitting the transfer portal and ready to low. Remember, that's how we got Georgia Eaton Collins this season.
From Florida. That's correct. There. Oh, I think it sounded like you were making a case for women's soccer to be the team of the year, and maybe perhaps early in the clubhouse. Maybe so. We got the transfer portal up, by the way, on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Now, not only we have football, but we have other things too on the site as far as keeping track with the portal.
Right now, so the way that it works is that so far we're going to track all the fall sports in this category, all the fall team sports. So football, the soccers, and volleyball are all going to be we're going to track who's in the transfer portal on there as we hear them. At the moment, you're only going to see outgoing transfers for football and incoming transfers for women's soccer, because that's the only things that have happened so far. So once other situations happen, such as football bringing in new transfers, or perhaps somebody may transfer out of women's soccer, and the same thing with men's soccer and volleyball. If someone makes an announcement that they are either entering the transfer portal or coming here from the transfer portal, we will add those to that page as they are made available. So it's all about just once we hear it, it's going to go up there.
Just bookmark it. That's what I do. That's the only way I can keep track. Trust me on that. And then lastly, men's soccer, Austin David, our good friend, just reported that Gino Vivi, Luca Dorado, and one other player is going to be
Anderson Rosa.
They're all invited to the MLS Combine, basically, tryouts in January. Is that when it takes place?
Actually, it takes place. We're recording this on December 7th. It starts December 9th and it goes through December 12th in Raleigh, North Carolina.
So they're going to do the tryouts. So this is kind of like the NFL Combine, the NFL, to showcase yourself for the upcoming MLS Super Draft that usually takes place in January. I have a feeling you and Austin may discuss this more further down the road on our YouTube channel, down the road on Black and Gold Banneret, which is a good plug, cheap plug to say. Remember to subscribe to the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel, and also follow us on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, as well as our blackandgoldbanneret.com website. We'll have much details there, including hopefully the TV article where UCF Tulane did 2.6 million viewers for the title game, 3.5 local rating in Orlando, near 10 rating in New Orleans. Big number to watch Tulane up there in that area. I forgot to mention that in the opening segment, so I threw it out now. So, but we're going to
better than what LSU did.
Correct, better result than LSU did. But we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks to Kyle Nash. Thanks to Drew Glukoff. Thank you, Bryson, for joining us. You got a busy week ahead. I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.